I don't get it. What's the hold-up? You are a human, yes? From the planet Ground? Stelt asked. The human blinked slowly at her. Sure. While we don't technically classify Ground as a deaf world, it does have a troublingly diverse microbiome. As such, you must go through deaf world and medical screening. We have to ensure the safety of all of our guests and residents here on Palomi Station. We triplets are charged with this responsibility, and we take it very seriously. Now came the not fun part. No species in the galaxy had a triplet's affinity for the bureaucratic, and this led to some very unfavorable situations in their rather tightly run space. Stelt herself had had a number of insults thrown at her on more than one occasion. Desk jockey, red taper, and a particularly nasty one that began with bureau and ended with a rather unsavory word that started with C. Admittedly, this was her first time interacting with a human, but she had no reason to expect anything different from them. Don't worry, it's only medical records and inoculations, she sighed. Plus is the condensed version for non-triplets, and seeing as your status is only a proto-deaf world, it's fairly short. Only 22 pages. It shouldn't take more than a few hours. Great. I love paperwork, came the drawn-out response. She cocked her head to the side. No one ever had that response. Maybe these humans were different after all. You do? Do you work for the government? The human just gestured to his clothing. Do I look like I work for the government? He asked. She examined the garments carefully. It was a single-piece suit that went from his shoulder all the way down his legs. Dark navy in colour with some minor and darker spots adorning it, mostly its shoulders and forearms. To her, this alien get-up very well could have been their version of formal wear. I do not know, she responded truthfully. The human just let out an indecipherable string of consonant sounds, followed by, I'm just Johnstone Hobbs Hauler Maintenance, not government. His eyes narrowed at her. Wait, shouldn't you know that information already? Like, isn't it on a form somewhere? Stelt's eyes widened. An oversight. An oversight that would need an addendum. An addendum she would recommend. She felt herself grow slightly lightheaded at the prospect of new forms being issued to every triplet control officer. One that would have an addendum with her name attached to it. Such feats were incredibly rare in this day and age, with the meticulous wording of triplet law. Every young triplet dreamed of having their name etched in the endless scrolls of administration, and this strange alien may have just granted her that. She could kiss the man in front of her, were it not a major breach of decorum. She would, however, definitely have to file a request for amicable ingestion of foodstuff with romantic intention with this captivating creature later. But for now, she had much more pressing issues to attend to. Plus, if the human was simply a mechanic, but still had a mind for regulatory matters, she wondered if the rest of them were so similarly inclined. She wished she was more tactful, but the prospect of a race that wouldn't bully hers, and even join them in the great bureaucratic machine that kept the Galactic Consortium running, led her to just belt out her next question. Tell me, do all humans share your affinity for paperwork, or is it only certain members of your species? The human sat back heavily in his chair. Oh no, humans love bureaucracy. Put a stack of sheets in front of us and we'll be happier than pigs in mud. Doubly so if it's on a weekend. He made a strange gesture that involved his thumb and forefinger coming together, while the rest remained stiffly upright. Stelt felt herself becoming enamored with this being, with his race. Finally, her people have found a kindred spirit in the stars. If humans were half as adept at administration as triplets were, poring over their trade and embargo laws could take her months, years even. She was practically vibrating with excitement from the thought alone. Wait right here, please, she said as she stood from her chair. I'll fetch the long-form version. After she had exited the small room, a barely audible "Jesus Christ" was uttered. Stelch returned to the office, her face beaming with pride as she placed a stack of forms that measured about the same as the human's forearm on the desk in front of him. The human spoke no words as she turned her back to retake her previous position. The only sound came from a dull thunk of bone meeting timber. Stelch turned to see the human, now slouched over, his head firmly planted on the wood. Oh no, she thought. This must be more paperwork than this poor soul has ever seen. I must have overstimulated him. She watched as the human raised from the desk. There was a dull red line that jagged across his forehead from where his skull met the edge. Her eyes shone. Time to lay on the old razzle-dazzle. Oh dear, it seems you've been injured. Don't you worry any, I'll just go get the forms. 3 humans approached the door to the Immigration and Customs Control office. There were 2 trauma meditechs, as was protocol for a human medical emergency, and Johnson Hobbs' representative, as was protocol for an emergency of this magnitude. But when the door slid open, their concentrated task-focused mentality evaporated, leaving only confusion in their wake. There in front of them laid a most peculiar scene. There was a rather annoyed-looking human in a standard mechanic jumpsuit lying supine on the off-green carpet. A triplet in semi-formal wear crouched over him, fanning his head with a manila folder, and a second triplet sitting behind a large wood desk, sobbing into her arms. The one behind the desk looked up from her arms. I'm sorry, she wailed. I did this and I'm sorry. He pointed out an oversight on one of our forms, and I got so wrapped up in my name being attached to the addendum, I wanted to pay him back. So I exaggerated some things so he would have more forms to fill out. I was only trying to show him kindness. I must have overstimulated him too much. He claimed he was having an aneurysm. The poor triplet began hyperventilating. At this, one of the 2 meditechs accompanying the human representative simply turned on his heel and walked out of the office. The other seemed to not react for a moment before she began to tremble from head to toe. Sounds akin to a wheezing seal emanated from her as she tried, and failed miserably, to stifle her brewing laughter. I swear to God, these people are going to make my fucking brain explode, the prone human lamented. See? The triplet cried, another round of tears making their way to the surface. I've killed him. He's going to die and it's all my fault. This caused the remaining meditech to lose all control, and she just helplessly fell into a cackling heap on the office floor. The representative pulled a communication device out of his pocket to update his superior on the situation. Sir, I've got some good news and bad news for you. He smiled as his boss answered the line. It's a bum deal for Mr. Davison here, but I have a feeling we're going to dummy them in the next trade negotiations.